Human rights are basic rights and freedoms which every person gets simply because they are human beings. These rights are universal, meaning they apply to all people without any discrimination of caste, religion, gender, nationality or status. The concept of human rights is based on the idea of dignity, equality and respect for every individual. Important human rights include right to life and personal liberty, right to equality, freedom of speech and expression, right against exploitation, right to education and right to live with dignity. These rights are recognized globally by instruments like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and are also protected in India through the Constitution, especially under fundamental rights. Human rights are both moral as well as legal rights. As moral rights, they exist because of human dignity and do not depend on law. As legal rights, they are enforceable when they are recognized and protected by law. In India, many human rights are legal rights because they are guaranteed by the Constitution and can be enforced through courts. For example, if a person's right to life or liberty is violated, he can approach the High Court or Supreme Court for protection. Thus, human rights become legal rights when they are recognized and enforced by the legal system. A simple case study is the famous case of Maneka Gandhi v. Union of India. In this case, the passport of Maneka Gandhi was impounded by the government without giving proper reasons or hearing. She challenged this action as violation of her right to personal liberty under Article 21. The Supreme Court held that the right to life and personal liberty is not limited to physical existence but includes the right to live with dignity and fairness. The court also said that any procedure which takes away liberty must be just, fair and reasonable. This case expanded the meaning of human rights in India and made them stronger legal rights. In conclusion, human rights are essential for the development of a fair and just society. They protect individuals from misuse of power and ensure equality and dignity for all. While they originate as moral rights, they become powerful legal rights when recognized by law and enforced by courts. Therefore, human rights are both moral and legal in nature and play a very important role in protecting individuals in modern society. The concept of human rights has developed gradually over time and is rooted in the idea that every human being deserves dignity, equality and freedom. In ancient times, though the term human rights was not used, similar ideas existed in moral and religious teachings in civilizations like India, Greece and Rome, where justice, duty and respect for others were emphasized. In medieval period, an important development was the Magna Carta of 1215 in England, which limited the powers of the king and recognized certain rights of individuals, laying the foundation of rule of law. In the modern period, the idea of human rights gained strength through major political developments. The American Revolution, 1776, declared that all men are created equal and have rights like life and liberty. Similarly, the French Revolution emphasized liberty, equality and fraternity, and led to the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen. These movements transformed human rights from moral ideas into political and legal principles. In the 20th century, after the horrors of the World War II, there was a strong need to protect human dignity globally. This led to the formation of the United Nations in 1945 and the adoption of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948, which formally recognized fundamental rights of all human beings at the international level. In India, the evolution of human rights is reflected in the Constitution of 1950, especially in fundamental rights and directive principles of state policy, which ensure equality, freedom and protection against exploitation. Over time, courts have expanded these rights through judicial interpretation, making them more meaningful in real life. Thus, the concept of human rights has evolved from ancient moral values to modern legal rights, becoming universal and enforceable. It continues to grow with changing society, ensuring protection of human dignity and justice for all. The United Nations has played a vital role in the development and protection of human rights at the global level. After the horrors of World War II, the UN was established in 1945 with the aim of maintaining peace and promoting human dignity. One of its greatest contributions is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights adopted in 1948, which laid down basic rights such as right to life, liberty, equality and freedom for all people. Though not legally binding, it became the foundation of modern human rights law. The UN further developed human rights through important treaties like the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, which made many rights legally binding on member states. It also created bodies like the United Nations Human Rights Council to monitor violations and promote protection of rights worldwide. Specialized agencies and programs of the UN work for rights related to children, women, refugees and labor. The UN also encourages countries to include human rights in their constitutions and laws, provides guidelines, and conducts investigations into violations. It promotes awareness, education and international cooperation for human rights protection. Through peacekeeping missions and humanitarian efforts, the UN helps in protecting people in conflict zones. Thus, the United Nations has transformed human rights from a moral concept into a global legal and institutional system. Its continuous efforts have strengthened the protection of human dignity and made human rights a universal concern. The World Conference on Human Rights is important because it helped in strengthening and promoting human rights at the international level by bringing together different countries to discuss protection of human dignity. One of the most significant conferences was the World Conference on Human Rights held in Vienna, which reaffirmed that all human rights are universal, indivisible and interdependent. It emphasized equality, development, and the protection of vulnerable groups such as women and children. This conference also led to the establishment of the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights to promote and protect human rights globally. The Vienna Conference Declaration and Program of Action recognized that human rights should be respected by all nations without discrimination and highlighted the importance of democracy and development. It strengthened international cooperation and accountability among states. It also gave special importance to women's rights, declaring that women's rights are human rights. The Vienna Conference of 1968 refers to the International Conference on Human Rights held at Tehran, often called the International Conference on Human Rights, which reviewed the progress made since the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, 1948. It emphasized that civil, political, economic and social rights are equally important and must be protected. It also focused on issues like racial discrimination and colonialism, and stressed the need for effective implementation of human rights. Thus, these conferences played a crucial role in developing human rights by making them more universal, strengthening international commitment and ensuring better protection of human dignity. The International Conference on Human Rights refers to global meetings organized mainly under the United Nations to promote, review and strengthen the protection of human rights across the world. These conferences provide a common platform where different countries discuss problems, evaluate progress and adopt principles for better protection of human dignity. The most important early conference was the International Conference on Human Rights, which was the first global conference solely dedicated to human rights. It marked a major step in transforming human rights from theoretical ideas into practical international commitments. The Tehran Conference, 1968 was held from 22nd April to 13th May in Tehran, Iran, with participation of about 84 countries and many international organizations. Its main objective was to review the progress made since the adoption of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and to suggest future measures for better implementation. It was organized during the International Year of Human Rights declared by the UN. The most important outcome of this conference was the Proclamation of Tehran. This proclamation reaffirmed that human rights are universal and must be enjoyed by all people without discrimination of race, religion, language, or status. It also emphasized that civil and political rights cannot be separated from economic, social, and cultural rights, and both are equally important. The conference strongly condemned racial discrimination, apartheid, and colonialism, and supported the right of self-determination of peoples. It also highlighted that development and human rights are closely connected, and without economic and social progress, full enjoyment of rights is not possible. In conclusion, the International Conference on Human Rights, especially the Tehran Conference of 1968, played a crucial role in the evolution of human rights. It strengthened international commitment, expanded the scope of rights. Various international conferences on human rights have played a major role in developing and strengthening the protection of human dignity at the global level. The first major conference was the International Conference on Human Rights, held to review the progress after the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It adopted the Proclamation of Tehran, which emphasized that all human rights are universal and that civil, political, economic, and social rights are equally important. It also condemned racial discrimination, apartheid, and colonialism. Another significant conference was the World Conference on Human Rights, which reaffirmed that all human rights are universal, indivisible, and interdependent. It gave special importance to women's rights, declaring that women's rights are human rights, and led to the creation of the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights. This conference strengthened international cooperation and accountability. In addition, several other global meetings and summits organized under the United Nations have contributed to human rights development, such as conferences on environment, development, and social justice, which linked human rights with issues like poverty, education, and health. These conferences helped in expanding the scope of human rights beyond civil and political rights to include economic, social, and cultural rights. Thus, international conferences on human rights have helped in shaping global standards, promoting awareness, encouraging cooperation among nations, and ensuring better protection of human rights worldwide. The Magna Carta, 1215, was a landmark document in England which limited the powers of the king and established the rule of law. It declared that no person shall be deprived of liberty except according to law, thus laying the foundation of human rights and constitutional government. The Bill of Rights, 1689, further strengthened individual freedoms by restricting the authority of the monarchy and guaranteeing rights such as freedom of speech in parliament and protection from cruel punishments. The Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen was adopted during the French Revolution and proclaimed principles of liberty, equality, and fraternity. It recognized rights like freedom, property, and resistance to oppression. International declarations on human rights mainly refer to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, adopted by the United Nations, which laid down fundamental rights for all human beings such as right to life, equality, freedom, and dignity, and became the basis of modern human rights law worldwide. Human rights are broadly classified into different kinds based on their nature and purpose. First, civil and political rights include rights such as right to life, liberty, equality before law, freedom of speech, religion, and participation in government. These protect individual freedom from state interference. Second, economic, social, and cultural rights include right to work, education, health, food, and standard of living. These ensure basic needs and development of individuals. Third, collective or solidarity rights include right to development, peace, clean environment, and self-determination. These are enjoyed by groups or societies as a whole. Fourth, legal or constitutional rights are those recognized and enforceable by law. such as fundamental rights in India. Fifth, natural or moral rights are based on human dignity and exist even without legal recognition. These different kinds together ensure complete protection of human personality, balancing freedom, equality, and social justice. International human rights law comes from different sources which together create a system to protect human dignity at the global level. The most important source is treaties or conventions. These are formal agreements between countries where they promise to protect certain rights. Examples include the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, though technically a declaration, it inspired binding law, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. When a country signs and ratifies such treaties, it becomes legally bound to follow them. Another important source is customary international law. This develops from consistent practice of states followed out of a sense of legal obligation. Even if a country has not signed a treaty, it may still be bound by customs such as prohibition of slavery, torture, and genocide. General principles of law are also a source. These are basic legal ideas like fairness, equality, and justice which are recognized by most legal systems of the world. Judicial decisions and writings of legal scholars also help in developing human rights law. Courts like the International Court of Justice and national courts interpret human rights norms and give them practical meaning. In addition, resolutions and declarations adopted by bodies like the United Nations play a significant role by guiding states and influencing lawmaking, even if they are not always legally binding. A simple case study is Vishakha v. State of Rajasthan. In this case, there was no specific law in India to deal with sexual harassment at the workplace. The Supreme Court referred to international conventions like CEDAW and used them to frame guidelines to protect women's rights. This shows how international human rights law can influence national law and fill legal gaps to ensure justice. In conclusion, the sources of international human rights law include treaties, customs, general principles. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, UDHR, adopted by the United Nations in 1948, is a landmark document that lays down basic human rights for all people. It contains 30 articles covering civil, political, economic, social, and cultural rights. Important rights include right to life, liberty and security, equality before law, freedom of speech and religion, right to work, education, and adequate standard of living. Though it is not legally binding, it has great moral and legal influence and forms the basis of many national constitutions and international laws. The principles of UDHR are largely reflected in the Indian Constitution. Fundamental rights under Part 3, such as right to equality, freedom, protection of life and personal liberty, freedom of religion and protection against exploitation, closely correspond to the civil and political rights mentioned in UDHR. Similarly, directive principles of state policy under Part 4 reflect economic and social rights like right to work, education, public health, and welfare. The Indian judiciary has also expanded these rights through interpretation, especially under Article 21, to include right to dignity, clean environment, and fair procedure. However, not all UDHR rights are directly enforceable in India. Fundamental rights are legally enforceable, while directive principles are not enforceable by courts but guide the state in policy making. Despite this, many directive principles have been gradually implemented through laws and judicial decisions. Thus, the Indian Constitution has adopted the spirit and principles of UDHR to a large extent and ensures protection of human dignity and justice in society. The International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, 1966 is a major international treaty adopted by the United Nations to protect civil and political rights of individuals. It makes many rights legally binding on the countries that ratify it. The Covenant guarantees important rights such as right to life, protection against torture and cruel treatment, freedom from slavery and forced labor, right to personal liberty and security, and protection against arbitrary arrest and detention. It also ensures fair trial rights, including presumption of innocence, right to legal defense and public hearing by an impartial court. The Covenant further provides freedom of thought, conscience and religion, freedom of expression, peaceful assembly and association. It protects political rights like the right to participate in public affairs and to vote in free and fair elections. It also ensures equality before law and prohibits discrimination on grounds like race, sex, religion, or nationality. Special provisions are made for protection of minorities to enjoy their culture, language and religion. The ICCPR also includes provisions for implementation and monitoring. It established the Human Rights Committee to supervise the application of the Covenant by examining reports submitted by member states. The optional protocols to the Covenant give additional rights, such as allowing individuals to file complaints before the committee and aiming at abolition of death penalty. In conclusion, the ICCPR 1966 is a comprehensive document that secures essential civil and political freedoms and imposes legal obligations on states to respect, protect and fulfill these rights, thereby strengthening human rights protection at the international level. The International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, 1966 adopted by the United Nations includes a wide range of subjects relating to basic human welfare and development. It recognizes the right to work, including fair wages, safe working conditions and equal pay for equal work. It also includes the right to form and join trade unions and the right to social security. The Covenant provides protection for family, mothers and children, including maternity benefits and child welfare. It guarantees the right to an adequate standard of living, which includes food, clothing, housing and continuous improvement of living conditions. It also recognizes the right to health, ensuring medical care and improvement of public health. Education is another important subject, including free and compulsory primary education and access to higher education. Additionally, it protects cultural rights, such as participation in cultural life and benefits of scientific progress. These subjects aim to ensure dignity, equality, and overall development of every individual. International and regional conventions on human rights are legal agreements made by countries to protect and promote human dignity at global and regional levels. At the international level, the most important conventions are the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which laid the foundation of human rights, and the two binding covenants, namely the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, both adopted in 1966. These together form the International Bill of Human Rights. Other important international conventions include conventions against torture, racial discrimination, discrimination against women and rights of the child, which focus on protection of specific groups and issues. At the regional level, different parts of the world have developed their own human rights systems. In Europe, the European Convention on Human Rights provides strong protection of civil and political rights and allows individuals to approach the European Court of Human Rights. In America, the American Convention on Human Rights ensures protection of similar rights and is enforced by regional institutions. In Africa, the African Charter on Human and People's Rights recognizes both individual and collective rights and emphasizes duties along with rights. These international and regional conventions together create a comprehensive system for protection of human rights. International conventions provide universal standards applicable to all countries, while regional conventions offer more effective enforcement and address local issues. Thus, they work together to promote equality, justice and human dignity across the world. The European Convention on Human Rights and the American Convention on Human Rights are important regional human rights agreements which protect fundamental rights and provide strong enforcement systems. The European Convention was adopted in 1950 under the Council of Europe. It mainly focuses on civil and political rights such as right to life, prohibition of torture, right to liberty and security, fair trial, freedom of expression, religion and privacy. Its most important feature is the European Court of Human Rights, where individuals can directly file complaints against their own state if their rights are violated. The decisions of this court are binding on member states, which makes this system very effective. A simple case study is Handyside v. United Kingdom. In this case, a publisher was punished for publishing a book considered obscene. He claimed violation of freedom of expression. The court held that freedom of expression is essential in a democratic society, even for ideas that may offend or disturb, but it also allowed reasonable restrictions. This case shows how the convention balances individual freedom and public interest. The American Convention on Human Rights, adopted in 1969 under the Organization of American States, also protects civil and political rights like right to life, personal liberty, fair trial, freedom of expression and right to participate in government. It established the Inter-American Commission and the Inter-American Court of Human Rights for supervision and enforcement. Unlike Europe, individuals usually approach the Commission first, which may then refer the case to the court. This system is also important for protecting human rights in the American region. A simple case study is Velázquez-Rodriguez v. Honduras. In this case, a person was forcibly disappeared by state authorities. The court held the state responsible for violating the right to life and liberty and stated that governments must not only respect rights, also ensure protection. The African Charter on Human and People's Rights, also called the Banjul Charter, is a regional human rights law adopted in 1981 by the Organization of African Unity, now the African Union, and came into force in 1986. Its main aim is to protect human rights and promote dignity, equality and justice in African countries. The Charter is unique because it not only gives rights to individuals but also recognizes the rights of communities, people's rights, and imposes duties on individuals. It reflects African traditions where community, family, and social responsibility are very important. The rights under the Charter can be understood in three broad categories. First are civil and political rights. These include the right to equality and non-discrimination, Articles 2 and 3, which means all persons are equal before law. The right to life and personal integrity, Article 4, protects individuals from arbitrary killing. The right to dignity, Article 5, prohibits torture, slavery and inhuman treatment. The right to personal liberty, Article 6, ensures protection from illegal arrest and detention. The right to fair trial, Article 7, includes the right to be heard, presumption of innocence and legal defense. Freedom of religion, Article 8, freedom of expression, Article 9, freedom of association and assembly, Articles 10 and 11, and freedom of movement, Article 12, are also guaranteed. The right to participate in government, Article 13, allows citizens to take part in public affairs. Second are economic, social, and cultural rights. These ensure a decent standard of living. The right to work, Article 15, ensures fair employment conditions. The right to health, Article 16, guarantees medical care. The right to education and cultural development, Article 17, promotes learning and cultural identity. The family is given special protection, Article 18, as the basic unit of society, and the state must support it. Third are people's or collective rights, which make this charter special. These include the right to self-determination, Article 20, meaning people can choose their own government. The right to control natural resources, Article 21, gives communities ownership over their wealth. The right to development, Article 22, ensures economic and social progress. The right to peace and security, Article 23, and the right to a healthy environment, Article 24, are also recognized. These rights focus on groups and communities rather than just individuals. Apart from rights, the Charter also lays down duties of individuals, which is a unique feature. Every individual has duties towards family and society, such as respecting parents, maintaining harmony, and helping the community. There are duties towards the state, like obeying laws, paying taxes, and defending the country. Individuals also have duties towards other people, such as respecting their rights, promoting tolerance, and avoiding discrimination. Finally, there are duties towards the international community, including promoting African unity and independence. A well-known case study is the Serac v. Nigeria, Ogoni case. In this case, the Nigerian government allowed oil companies to exploit the land of the Ogoni people without protecting their environment. This caused pollution, health problems, and destruction of livelihood. The African Commission held that Nigeria violated several rights under the Charter, including the right to health, Article 16, the right to a healthy environment, Article 24, and the right to development, Article 22. The Commission stated that the government has a duty to protect people from harm caused by private companies. This case clearly shows how the Charter protects both individual and collective rights. In conclusion, the African Charter on Human and People's Rights is a comprehensive human rights document that combines civil, political, economic, social, and collective rights with individual duties. The Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, OCHR, is the main body of the United Nations responsible for promoting and protecting human rights across the world. It is headed by the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, a senior official appointed by the UN Secretary-General and approved by the General Assembly. The post was created in 1993 after the World Conference on Human Rights Vienna 1993, which emphasized the need for a strong global mechanism to safeguard human rights. The headquarters of OCHR is in Geneva, Switzerland. The main objective of the High Commissioner is to ensure that all people enjoy their fundamental rights such as life, liberty, equality, and dignity without discrimination. The High Commissioner acts as a global voice for victims of human rights violations and works to prevent abuses before they occur. The office is guided by the principles of universality, impartiality, objectivity, and non-selectivity, meaning that human rights apply to all people equally. The functions of the High Commissioner can be understood in simple terms. First, it promotes human rights by spreading awareness, educating people, and encouraging governments to follow international human rights laws. Second, it protects human rights by monitoring situations in different countries, investigating violations, and raising concerns at international forums. Third, it provides technical assistance to countries by helping them improve their laws, courts, and institutions. Fourth, it cooperates with other UN bodies such as the Human Rights Council and treaty committees. Fifth, it supports victims by bringing attention to their problems and recommending remedies. The powers of the High Commissioner are mostly advisory and supervisory, not judicial. It cannot punish a country directly, but it can influence global opinion and put pressure on governments through reports, statements, and international discussions. An important role of the High Commissioner is crisis response. In situations of war, conflict, or emergency, the office works to protect civilians and ensure respect for international law. It also addresses issues such as discrimination, gender inequality, freedom of speech, refugee protection, and minority rights. The High Commissioner often speaks publicly against violations and urges governments to take corrective steps. A well-known case study is the human rights situation of the Rohingya people in Myanmar. The OCHR reported serious violations such as violence, forced displacement and denial of basic rights. It described the actions as possible crimes against humanity. Due to these reports, the issue received global attention and international pressure increased on Myanmar. The case shows how the High Commissioner plays an important role in highlighting violations and mobilizing international action, even though it does not have direct enforcement power. The importance of the High Commissioner lies in its role as the conscience of the world. It ensures that human rights remain a global priority and that no violation goes unnoticed. It helps build a culture of respect for human dignity and encourages countries to follow international standards. It also gives a voice to the weak and marginalized sections of society. However, there are some limitations. The office depends on the cooperation of states, and some countries may ignore its recommendations. Political pressure and lack of enforcement power can reduce its effectiveness. Despite these challenges, the High Commissioner continues to play a crucial role in promoting justice and accountability worldwide. In conclusion, the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights is a key institution for the protection and promotion of human rights at the global level. It works through awareness, monitoring, reporting, and cooperation. Although it lacks direct enforcement power. 1. Human Rights Commission. A National Human Rights Commission of India, NHRC, is a statutory body established under the Protection of Human Rights Act, 1993. Its main function is to protect and promote human rights in a country. It investigates complaints of human rights violations such as police brutality, custodial deaths, and discrimination. It can also take suo motu action, visit jails, review laws, and recommend compensation to victims. However, its recommendations are advisory in nature and not binding on the government. 2. Center for Human Rights. The Center for Human Rights generally refers to the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, OCHR, at the international level. It works under the United Nations to promote and protect human rights globally. It provides support to countries, conducts research, spreads awareness, and monitors violations. It also assists the Human Rights Council and other UN bodies in implementing human rights standards. 3. Human Rights Hotline. A human rights hotline is a helpline service where people can report violations of their rights. In India, the National Human Rights Commission of India provides complaint mechanisms through online portals and phone services. The purpose of such hotlines is to give quick access to justice, especially for vulnerable people. Complaints received are examined and may lead to inquiry or action by authorities. 4. Human Rights Council. The United Nations Human Rights Council, UNHRC, is an important international body responsible for promoting and protecting human rights worldwide. It was established in 2006 and is based in Geneva. It reviews the human rights record of all countries through a process called Universal Periodic Review, UPR. It can also appoint special rapporteurs to investigate specific issues and make recommendations. Although it does not have enforcement power, it plays a strong role in creating international pressure on countries to respect human rights. International law relating to human rights refers to a set of global rules and principles developed by the international community to protect the dignity, freedom, and equality of all human beings. These laws are mainly created through treaties, conventions, declarations, and customary practices. After the World War II, the world realized the need to protect individuals from state abuse, which led to the development of modern human rights law under the United Nations. The basic idea is that human rights are universal, meaning they apply to all persons everywhere without discrimination. The foundation of international human rights law is the Charter of the United Nations, UN Charter. It recognizes the importance of human rights in its preamble and Articles 1, 55, and 56. It aims to promote respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms for all without distinction of race, sex, language, or religion. Although the Charter does not list specific rights, it creates a legal obligation for member states to cooperate in promoting human rights. One of the most important developments is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, UDHR, adopted in 1948. It is not legally binding but is considered the foundation of all human rights law. It contains 30 articles covering civil, political, economic, social, and cultural rights. These include the right to life, liberty, equality, freedom of expression, right to work, education, and social security. The UDHR is important because it sets a common standard for all countries and has influenced many constitutions and laws. The United Nations Commission on Human Rights was established in 1946 as a subsidiary body of the UN Economic and Social Council. Its main task was to promote and protect human rights and to draft important documents like the UDHR. It also examined complaints of human rights violations and made recommendations. However, due to political bias and inefficiency, it was replaced in 2006 by the Human Rights Council. The Vienna Declaration and Programme of Action was adopted at the World Conference on Human Rights in 1993. It reaffirmed that all human rights are universal, indivisible, and interdependent. This means civil, political, economic, and social rights are equally important. It also emphasized the right to development, women's rights, and protection of minorities. One of its major outcomes was the creation of the post of UN High Commissioner for Human Rights. International human rights law also includes various treaties like the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, which make rights legally binding on states. Countries that sign these treaties must respect, protect, and fulfill human rights. Enforcement is mainly done through reporting, monitoring, and international pressure, rather than strict punishment. In conclusion, international law relating to human rights is a comprehensive system developed by the United Nations to protect human dignity worldwide. The UN Charter laid the foundation, the UDHR provided a common standard, the Human Rights Commission worked for development of norms, and the Vienna Declaration strengthened and modernized the system. Together, they ensure that human rights remain a global concern and responsibility. The International Labour Organization, ILO, is one of the oldest international organizations, established in 1919 and later becoming a specialized agency of the United Nations. Its main objective is to promote social justice and ensure internationally recognized human and labor rights. The ILO plays a very important role in the development of international human rights, especially in the field of workers' rights. It is unique because it follows a tripartite structure, where governments, employers, and workers all participate equally in decision-making. The contribution of the ILO to human rights can be understood in several ways. First, it has developed international labor standards through conventions and recommendations. These standards set minimum conditions for workers across the world. Important conventions include those related to freedom of association, abolition of forced labor, elimination of child labor, and non-discrimination in employment. These are considered core human rights and are recognized globally. Second, the ILO has strongly promoted the concept of decent work. This means that every person should have access to productive work in conditions of freedom, equality, security, and dignity. Decent work includes fair wages, safe working conditions, social security, and equal opportunity. This concept connects labor rights directly with human dignity and human rights. Third, the ILO has played a key role in abolishing forced labor and child labor. Through its conventions and monitoring system, it has helped many countries to eliminate practices like bonded labor and exploitation of children. For example, the ILO's Convention number 182 on the worst forms of child labor has been widely accepted and has led to significant reforms in many countries. Fourth, the ILO promotes equality and non-discrimination at the workplace. It ensures that workers are not discriminated against on the basis of race, gender, religion, or nationality. Fifth, the ILO provides technical assistance and guidance to countries. It helps governments to improve labor laws, strengthen institutions, and implement policies that protect workers. It also conducts training programs and awareness campaigns. A simple case study can be seen in the efforts to eliminate child labor in India. With the support of the ILO, India strengthened its laws against child labor and introduced programs for education and rehabilitation of children. As a result, many children were removed from hazardous work and given access to schooling. This shows how the ILO contributes to protecting basic human rights like education and dignity. The ILO also monitors the implementation of its conventions. Member states are required to submit reports, and the ILO examines whether they are following international standards. Although the ILO does not have strict enforcement power, its monitoring system creates international pressure on countries to comply. In conclusion, the International Labour Organization has made a significant contribution to international human rights by protecting workers' rights, promoting equality, eliminating exploitation, and ensuring decent working conditions. It has helped to recognize labor rights as an essential part of human rights. Through its standards, policies, and global cooperation, the ILO continues to play a vital role in improving the lives of workers around the world. Human rights are fully and deeply incorporated in the Constitution of India, which reflects the ideals of dignity, equality, and freedom similar to international standards like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The Indian Constitution not only recognizes human rights but also provides legal protection and remedies for their enforcement. Therefore, it can be said that human rights are adopted to a very great extent in India, though some practical challenges still exist. The most important part of human rights in the Constitution is the fundamental rights given in Part 3, Articles 12 to 35. These rights are directly enforceable by courts. They include the right to equality, Articles 14 to 18, which ensures equality before law and prohibits discrimination. The right to freedom, Articles 19 to 22, provides freedoms such as speech, movement, and personal liberty. The right against exploitation, Articles 23 to 24, prohibits human trafficking and child labor. The right to freedom of religion, Articles 25 to 28, ensures religious liberty. Cultural and educational rights, Articles 29 to 30, protect minorities. The right to constitutional remedies, Article 32, allows individuals to approach the Supreme Court for enforcement of rights and is considered the heart and soul of the Constitution as stated by B.R. Ambedkar. Apart from fundamental rights, Directive Principles of State Policy, Part 4, also reflect human rights. These are not enforceable in courts but guide the government to promote social and economic justice. They include the right to work, education, public health, equal pay, and protection of children. These principles aim to create a welfare state and ensure socio-economic rights similar to international human rights law. Further, fundamental duties, Part IVA, remind citizens of their responsibilities, such as respecting the Constitution, promoting harmony, and protecting the environment. This shows a balance between rights and duties. Judiciary has played a major role in expanding human rights through interpretation. In the landmark case of Maneka Gandhi v. Union of India, the Supreme Court expanded the meaning of Article 21, right to life and personal liberty. It held that life does not mean mere animal existence but includes the right to live with dignity, freedom and fairness. This case made Indian human rights law more comprehensive and aligned it with global standards. Another important development is the creation of institutions like the National Human Rights Commission, NHRC, which works to protect human rights in practice. Laws such as the Right to Education Act and environmental laws also strengthen human rights protection. However, despite strong constitutional provisions, there are some limitations. Poverty, illiteracy, social inequality, gender discrimination and delays in justice affect the full realization of human rights. Sometimes misuse of power by authorities also leads to violations. Therefore, while the Constitution provides a strong framework, effective implementation remains a challenge. In conclusion, human rights are extensively adopted in the Indian Constitution through fundamental rights, directive principles and judicial interpretation. India has one of the most comprehensive systems for protection of human rights. However, the real success depends on proper implementation, awareness and respect for these rights in everyday life. The Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, CEDAW, is an important international treaty adopted by the United Nations in 1979 and came into force in 1981. It is often called the International Bill of Rights for Women because it aims to eliminate discrimination against women in all areas of life and ensure equality between men and women. Discrimination against women under CEDAW means any distinction, exclusion or restriction made on the basis of sex which has the effect of impairing or nullifying women's human rights and fundamental freedoms. The Convention requires countries, called state parties, to take active steps to remove such discrimination not only in law but also in practice. The Convention contains several important provisions. First, it guarantees equality between men and women in political and public life. Women have the right to vote, contest elections and participate in government and policy making. Second, it ensures equality in education, meaning women should have equal access to schools, training and career opportunities. Third, it promotes equality in employment, including equal pay for equal work, safe working conditions and protection against exploitation. CEDAW also focuses on social and cultural rights. It requires states to change social practices and stereotypes that treat women as inferior. It recognizes the role of women in family life and ensures equality in marriage, divorce, and child custody. It also provides protection for women's health, including maternity care. Another important feature is that CEDAW gives special attention to rural women, who often face greater discrimination. It ensures their access to health care, education, employment, and participation in development programs. The Convention establishes a monitoring body called the Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women. Countries must submit regular reports to this committee about the steps they have taken. The committee reviews these reports and gives recommendations to improve women's rights. A simple case study can be seen in India. After becoming a party to CEDAW, India strengthened laws for women's protection, such as laws against domestic violence and workplace harassment. For example, the law against sexual harassment at the workplace was influenced by international principles of gender equality. This shows how CEDAW helps countries improve their legal systems and protect women's rights. However, there are some limitations. Some countries make reservations to certain provisions of the Convention, which reduces its effectiveness. Also, enforcement depends on the willingness of countries to follow the rules. In conclusion, CEDAW is a comprehensive international treaty that aims to eliminate discrimination against women in all fields such as political, social, economic, and cultural life. It plays a crucial role in promoting gender equality and protecting women's human rights across the world. Human rights are the basic rights and freedoms that belong to every human being simply because they are human. These rights are universal, inalienable, and essential for a life of dignity. They are recognized globally through instruments like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and are also protected in national laws such as the Constitution of India. Human rights include civil and political rights like the right to life, liberty, equality, and freedom of speech, as well as economic, social, and cultural rights such as the right to education, health, and work. Weaker sections of society refer to groups of people who are socially, economically, or politically disadvantaged and therefore more vulnerable to exploitation and discrimination. In India, weaker sections include scheduled castes, SCs, scheduled tribes, STs, women, children, elderly persons, persons with disabilities, and economically weaker sections. The Constitution provides special protection to these groups through provisions like equality before law, prohibition of discrimination, and reservation policies. Directive principles also direct the state to promote the welfare of weaker sections and protect them from injustice. Various laws and schemes have been introduced to uplift these groups and ensure their human rights are protected. Terrorism is one of the biggest threats to human rights in modern times. It refers to the use of violence, fear, and intimidation by individuals or groups to achieve political, religious, or ideological goals. Terrorist acts such as bomb blasts, hijacking, and attacks on civilians directly violate the most basic human rights, especially the right to life and security. Terrorism creates fear in society, disrupts peace, and affects development. At the same time, measures taken by the state to control terrorism must also respect human rights. Excessive use of force, illegal detention, or torture in the name of security can also violate human rights. The Protection of Human Rights Act 1993 is an important law enacted in India to provide better protection of human rights and to establish institutions like the National and State Human Rights Commissions. The Act reflects the values of dignity, equality, and justice as recognized in the Constitution of India and international standards such as the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Objectives of the Act. The main objectives of the Act are as follows. First, to provide better protection and promotion of human rights in India. Human rights under the Act mean rights relating to life, liberty, equality, and dignity guaranteed by the Constitution or embodied in international covenants. Second, to establish institutions like the National Human Rights Commission of India, NHRC, State Human Rights Commissions, and Human Rights Courts for effective implementation. Third, to ensure speedy inquiry into complaints of human rights violations such as custodial deaths, police excesses, and discrimination. Fourth, to spread awareness and promote research in the field of human rights. Fifth, to encourage cooperation between government and non-governmental organizations for the protection of rights. Characteristics, features of the Act. The Act has several important features. First, it provides for the establishment of independent bodies like NHRC at the national level and similar commissions at the state level. These bodies consist of a chairperson, usually a former Chief Justice of India, and other members with legal and human rights experience. Second, the Act defines human rights broadly, including rights guaranteed by the Constitution and international covenants. Third, the commissions have the power to inquire into complaints either on petitions filed by victims or on their own, suo motu. They can call for reports, summon witnesses, examine evidence, and visit jails or detention centers. Fourth, the commissions can recommend compensation to victims and suggest disciplinary action against guilty officials. However, their recommendations are advisory in nature and not binding. Fifth, the Act provides for the establishment of human rights courts in every district for speedy trial of offences related to human rights violations. Sixth, It emphasizes awareness by promoting human rights education, research and publications. 7th, it allows the commissions to review safeguards provided by law and recommend improvements. A simple example can help to understand its working. Suppose a person dies in police custody. The NHRC can take suo motu notice, ask for a report from the state government, conduct an inquiry and recommend compensation to the victim's family. It may also suggest action against responsible officials. This ensures accountability and protection of human rights. In conclusion, the Protection of Human Rights Act, 1993 is a significant step in strengthening human rights protection in India. Its objectives focus on safeguarding dignity and justice, while its features provide institutional mechanisms for implementation. Although it has some limitations like non-binding recommendations, it plays a vital role in promoting and protecting human rights. Armed Forces. Armed Forces means the naval, military and air forces and includes any other armed forces of the Union. Chairperson. Chairperson means the chairperson of the National Human Rights Commission, NHRC, or a state human rights commission, who is the head of the commission. Commission. Commission means the National Human Rights Commission of India constituted under Section 3 of the Act. International Covenants. International covenants refer mainly to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, as adopted by the United Nations. Member. Member means a member of the National or State Human Rights Commission and includes the chairperson. Notification. Notification means a notification published in the official gazette, i.e., an official public announcement by the government. Public servant. Public servant has the same meaning as given in Section 21 of the Indian Penal Code and includes government officials, police officers, judges and others performing public duties. The National Human Rights Commission of India, NHRC, is an independent statutory body established under the Protection of Human Rights Act 1993 to protect and promote human rights in India. Human rights under the Act mean rights relating to life, liberty, equality and dignity guaranteed by the Constitution of India and international covenants. The NHRC plays a crucial role in ensuring that these rights are respected in practice. Constitution, composition of NHRC. The NHRC consists of a chairperson and other members. The chairperson is a former Chief Justice of India. Other members include one serving or former judge of the Supreme Court, one serving or former Chief Justice of a High Court, and two members having knowledge or experience in human rights. In addition, the chairpersons of National Commissions for Scheduled Castes, Scheduled Tribes, Women, Minorities and other similar bodies are considered ex officio members for coordination. The members are appointed by the President of India on the recommendation of a committee consisting of the Prime Minister, Speaker of Lok Sabha, Leader of Opposition and other important officials. This process ensures independence and fairness. The tenure of members is fixed, and they can be removed only under specific conditions, which protects them from political pressure. Functions of NHRC. The NHRC performs several important functions. First, it inquires into complaints of human rights violations either on petitions filed by victims or on its own, suo motu. Second, it intervenes in court proceedings involving human rights issues with the approval of the court. Third, it visits jails and detention centers to examine living conditions of inmates and make recommendations. Fourth, it reviews constitutional and legal safeguards for human rights and suggests improvements. Fifth, it studies international treaties and promotes their effective implementation in India. Sixth, it undertakes research, spreads awareness and encourages human rights education. Seventh, it supports non-governmental organizations working in the field of human rights. These functions show that the NHRC is not only reactive but also preventive and promotional in nature. Powers of NHRC. The NHRC has powers similar to a civil court while conducting inquiries. It can summon witnesses, require the production of documents, receive evidence on affidavits, and examine persons. It can call for reports from the government and investigate through its own agencies. After inquiry, it can recommend compensation to victims, suggest disciplinary action against guilty officials, and advise the government to take corrective steps. However, its recommendations are not legally binding, which is a limitation. The Commission can also approach the Supreme Court or High Courts for enforcement of human rights. Case study, simple explanation. A well-known example is custodial death cases. Suppose a person dies in police custody. The NHRC can take suo motu notice, ask the state for a report and conduct an inquiry. In many such cases, the NHRC has recommended compensation to the victim's family and action against responsible officers. This ensures accountability and gives relief to victims. It also creates pressure on authorities to follow proper procedures and respect human rights. Evaluation and conclusion. The NHRC has played an important role in highlighting issues like custodial violence, bonded labor, child labor, and discrimination. It has increased awareness and improved government accountability. However, it faces challenges such as lack of binding powers, delays in implementation, and dependence on government agencies for investigation. Despite these limitations, the NHRC remains a vital institution for the protection of human rights in India. It acts as a watchdog and ensures that the values of dignity, equality, and justice are upheld in society. The State Human Rights Commissions India, SHRCs, are statutory bodies established under the Protection of Human Rights Act 1993 to protect and promote human rights at the state level. While the National Human Rights Commission of India, NHRC, works at the national level, SHRCs deal with issues within a particular state. Their main aim is to ensure that the rights relating to life, liberty, equality, and dignity, guaranteed by the Constitution of India, are properly implemented in practice. Constitution, composition of SHRC. Each State Human Rights Commission consists of a chairperson and other members. The chairperson is a former Chief Justice of a High Court. Other members include one serving or former High Court judge or district judge and one or two members having knowledge or practical experience in human rights. The members are appointed by the Governor of the state on the recommendation of a committee consisting of the Chief Minister, Speaker of the Legislative Assembly, Home Minister, and Leader of Opposition. This ensures a balanced and independent selection process. Members have a fixed tenure and can be removed only under specific conditions, which protects their independence. Functions of SHRC. The SHRC performs several important functions. First, it inquires into complaints of human rights violations within the state either on petitions filed by victims or on its own, suo motu. Second, it intervenes in court proceedings related to human rights with the permission of the court. Third, it visits jails, detention centers, and other institutions to examine the conditions of inmates and suggest improvements. Fourth, it reviews safeguards provided under the Constitution and laws and recommends better measures for protection. Fifth, it promotes human rights awareness, education, and research. Sixth, it encourages the efforts of non-governmental organizations working in the field of human rights. Thus, SHRC works both as a watchdog and as a promoter of human rights. Powers of SHRC. The SHRC has powers similar to a civil court while conducting inquiries. It can summon witnesses, require the production of documents, receive evidence on affidavits, and examine persons. It can call for information from the state government and conduct investigations through its own agencies. After inquiry, it can recommend compensation to victims, suggest disciplinary action against guilty officials, and advise the government to take corrective steps. However, like NHRC, its recommendations are advisory and not binding. It can also approach the High Court for necessary directions. Duties, responsibilities of SHRC. The SHRC has certain important duties. It must ensure that human rights violations are promptly addressed and justice is provided to victims. It should act independently and impartially without political influence. It has a duty to spread awareness among people about their rights so that they can protect themselves. It must also ensure transparency and fairness in its functioning. Another important duty is to cooperate with the NHRC and other bodies to strengthen the overall human rights system in the country. Case study, simple explanation. A simple example can be seen in cases of police harassment at the state level. Suppose a person is illegally detained and beaten by local police. The victim or any person can file a complaint before the SHRC. The Commission can investigate the matter, call for reports, examine witnesses and recommend compensation and action against the police officers. In many states, SHRCs have provided relief to victims in such cases. This helps in ensuring accountability and protecting citizens from misuse of power. In conclusion, state human rights commissions play a vital role in protecting human rights at the grassroots level. Their structure ensures independence, their functions cover both protection and promotion, and their powers help in effective inquiry. Although their recommendations are not binding, the concepts of human rights courts and special public prosecutor are provided under the Protection of Human Rights Act 1993 to ensure speedy and effective justice in cases of human rights violations. These provisions strengthen the implementation of human rights guaranteed under the Constitution of India. Human rights courts. Human rights courts are special courts established at the district level for the quick trial of offences arising out of violations of human rights. Section 30 of the Act provides that the state government may, with the concurrence of the Chief Justice of the High Court, specify a court of session as a human rights court for each district. The main objective of these courts is to ensure speedy justice and reduce delays in ordinary courts. These courts deal specifically with offences related to human rights violations such as custodial violence, illegal detention, exploitation, and abuse by public authorities. Since delay in justice can deny real relief to victims, these courts are meant to provide fast-track proceedings. However, in practice, many states have not effectively operationalized these courts, and in some places, they function as ordinary sessions courts without special procedures. The importance of human rights courts lies in their focus on victim protection and accountability of authorities. They help in strengthening the rule of law and ensuring that violations are addressed seriously. But their effectiveness depends on proper implementation, infrastructure, and awareness among people. Special Public Prosecutor. Section 31 of the Act provides for the appointment of a special public prosecutor for every human rights court. The state government appoints a special public prosecutor who must be an advocate with at least 7 years of experience. The role of the special public prosecutor is to conduct cases related to human rights violations on behalf of the state. The special public prosecutor plays a crucial role in ensuring justice. He or she presents evidence, examines witnesses, argues the case in court and ensures that the rights of victims are properly represented. Since human rights cases often involve serious issues like abuse of power by authorities, a skilled prosecutor is necessary to ensure fairness and effectiveness. Case study, simple explanation. Consider a case where a person is illegally detained and tortured by police officials. Such an act violates the right to life and personal liberty. If the matter is brought before a human rights court, the special public prosecutor will represent the case, present evidence such as medical reports and witness statements, and argue against the accused officials. The court can then ensure speedy trial and punishment of the guilty, along with relief to the victim. This example shows how these mechanisms help in delivering justice effectively. Conclusion. In conclusion, human rights courts and special public prosecutors are important mechanisms under the Protection of Human Rights Act, 1993. They aim to provide quick and effective justice in cases of human rights violations. While the legal framework is strong, their success depends on proper implementation and awareness. If effectively used, they can play a significant role in protecting human dignity and ensuring accountability. The judiciary plays a vital role in the enforcement of human rights in India. Human rights are guaranteed under the Constitution of India, especially through fundamental rights in Part 3. The courts, particularly the Supreme Court and High Courts, act as guardians of these rights. They ensure that the government and authorities do not violate the rights of individuals and provide remedies when violations occur. Thus, the judiciary is the backbone of human rights protection in India. One of the most important contributions of the judiciary is the power of judicial review. This means courts can examine laws and actions of the government and declare them invalid if they violate human rights. Articles 32 and 226 give citizens the right to approach the Supreme Court and High Courts directly for enforcement of fundamental rights. Remedies like writs, habeas corpus, mandamus, certiorari, prohibition and quo warranto help in protecting individual liberty. Another major contribution is the expansion of the scope of human rights through judicial interpretation. The courts have interpreted rights in a broad and progressive manner. For example, Article 21, right to life and personal liberty, has been expanded to include the right to live with dignity, right to livelihood, right to clean environment, right to privacy, and many other rights. This has made human rights more meaningful and practical. The judiciary has also developed the concept of public interest litigation, PIL, which allows any public-spirited person to approach the court on behalf of victims who are unable to seek justice themselves. This has helped weaker sections such as bonded laborers, prisoners, women, and children. PIL has made justice more accessible and has strengthened human rights protection. Another important role of the judiciary is to ensure accountability of public authorities. Courts have taken strict action against police excesses, custodial violence, illegal detention, and abuse of power. They have also awarded compensation to victims in many cases. This creates fear among authorities and prevents misuse of power. A landmark case study is Maneka Gandhi v. Union of India. In this case, the Supreme Court held that the right to life under Article 21 is not limited to mere existence but includes the right to live with dignity and fairness. The court also said that any law affecting personal liberty must be just, fair, and reasonable. This judgment expanded the scope of human rights and ensured stronger protection for individuals. Another example is the Vishaka v. State of Rajasthan, where the Supreme Court laid down guidelines to prevent sexual harassment at the workplace, recognizing it as a violation of human rights. These guidelines were later turned into law. This shows how the judiciary fills gaps where legislation is absent. However, there are some limitations. Delay in justice, high cost of litigation, and lack of awareness among people reduce the effectiveness of judicial protection. Sometimes, implementation of court orders is also weak. Despite these challenges, the judiciary continues to play a crucial role in protecting human rights. In conclusion, the judiciary has made a significant contribution in enforcing human rights through judicial review, interpretation, PIL, and protection against abuse of power. It has transformed the Constitution into a living document and ensured that human dignity is respected. The courts act as a protector of the weak and a check on arbitrary power, making them essential for a democratic society.